Uh, Dana Stevens here from Patterson, New Jersey, also known as Average Bro. And I do play saxophones and things like that, but we're here to explore our minds and things not specifically related to music, although coming from a musician's standpoint. Not to talk for everyone else, but that's just kind of how I'm seeing it. Going ahead, Peter.
Yeah, Peter Stoltzman here. I'm Peter John Stoltzman everywhere, pretty much, and yeah, I play the piano, and I'm a dad. I'm a teacher.
Dad.
Run a nonprofit organization, and uh, and I really value these conversations as well.
Yeah.
I love seeing you guys. I'm Lucas Vesely. I am a humanoid from the enchanted broccoli forest on planet Earth, and I also play music.
Yeah.
Very happy to be here.
Lukash, man, your musical meditations are fantastic.
Oh, dude.
I want to hear every electric bass player trying to play them, man.
Oh, bless you, dude. Well, please help me spread it around your community, man. And if I feel so grateful if there were more people that bought a book and took those pieces on. Ultimately, it's just one of a series, and I'm going to be putting out more. But that means a lot coming from you, man. I really respect you guys and I think you guys are the bee's knees when it comes to this music education and just like, yeah, you really make me happy, both of you. So inspiring to talk to you, to connect with you, to collaborate with you. And I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for those beautiful words.
Yeah,
Man, the feeling is mutual squared, my friend.
You guys.
Absolutely. Let's mention some of the collabs that we're doing. Actually, I mean, we just recorded a track with Dana. What's it called?
Yeah.
Hero's Journey, or
The Hero. It's just called The Hero.
Hero.
Yeah, it said the Hero's Prelude because I had written a whole
prelude. Yeah.
That new section was written after the last section was written. So anyway, but it's called The Hero. Yeah. And I was actually just mixing it this morning, and I'm, man, you guys, man.
The tune is an adventure.
It is.
It is an adventure, and it's man, your spirits on it is, yeah. I'm really happy. I can't wait for you to hear what I've done to it and added a couple things to it.
Nice.
But in due time.
Yeah. It's really an honor to be on it, man. Really.
Yeah, man.
I've been talking to people here about collaborating with both of you guys. Lucas has been out here once to Colorado and been on a couple shows with me, and of course he's been part of my music camp out here
Cool.
for several years. But we still haven't gotten you out here, Dana, and it's in the works. Hopefully, in the next. Who knows? Once reality kicks back in and we can actually travel places and do things.
Once we successfully combat this powerful, tiny, blind army.
Yeah.
In our midst.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, let me start. So first of all, we've been like passing back and forth videos and comments on a text thread that is like the by far by levels of exponential magnitude the most epic text thread I've ever had with any two people in my life.
I could say the same, my friend.
I'm writing like I'm sitting in my car for like 20 minutes writing texts.
Oh man.
Like yeah, man. So and we have been through already a lot of different things, everything from like Milton Friedman to to like this most recent stuff with
Ezra Klein, right?
Heather Heyer, Ezra Klein, Peter Joseph, Jordan
right.
Peterson.
Get hip. Peter Joseph.
and John McWhorter and Coleman Hughes, Coleman Hawkins. Almost said it.
Hey,
That's cool. That's cool.
Ibram Kendi, and Coleman Hughes, and
yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Ibram Kendi, that's right.
we are really, like, diving into and swimming around in these ideas. And I have to say, just up front, like, it's a very interesting and like kind of sometimes, like like emotional energy churning, like it's stirring stuff up for me, but it's like a really cool process. I feel like it's like a very modern dialectic, where like everybody and their cousin is able to put their ideas out and to become kind of recognized for their ideas, and there's something about the democratizing force of the internet and YouTube that is now makes it possible for you to be, accessing all sorts of different ideas like that, and one of the things about the way the algorithms work is that it silos people off into their little groups, right? And one of the things that I'm seeing happening for me, and probably for all three of us, is like we are really kind of breaking down those silo barriers. I'm seeing it just in my YouTube feed, right? It's like
Right.
there's no silo anymore. I'm getting stuff from all over the place. And
that's
like,
what it should be, man. Jesus.
yeah,
Right.
and I think there's something really cool about that. And we talked about this before, and I'm like, I still feel like, it's like a little bit like potentially dangerous for people, like because particularly because the algorithm can send you back into a silo, right? And so if you start following one thread and you're like, oh, this is interesting, and then all of a sudden you're like deep in another silo, and you're like, not considering a whole other, piece of the puzzle.
You just gotta have some good silo detectors. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, which leads us to the discussion that I was interested in, which is grievance. Because I think the thing that's so powerful and like sucky-inny about that's a scientific term.
Sucky-inny.
Sucky-inny.
That's a word. That's a good one.
It's like vortex you into the silo is grievance, right? If something agrees with you of like, oh yeah, that's totally it. Like I blame all the problems of the world on this thing, or like, or project all my fear and mistrust about the world on this thing, and that silo just reinforces all of it, and then we get like completely divided.
Yeah. As soon as you start looking for why am I grieving? It's your fault. Then you're in a silo.
Right.
I hate to say it. You got to always be looking at everything from a human standpoint. I mean, we all got our traumas. Whether you're an affluent kid in Bel Air, there's still trauma happening there. Whether you're in a Persian palace or a shack, and you gotta, if we're gonna come up with any solutions, or if solutions are even attainable these days, it's got to be looked at from the standpoint of the human condition first, before my skin color or my sexual orientation or my height or my weight or my whatever qualifier you want to put in there. I don't know. that's what's coming to my mind at this exact moment. I would love for that to be challenged, but that's what popped in my head from what you just said, Peter. Sorry, and I will stop now.
Oh,
Average
great.
bro, shut up.
Oh, average bro.
What do you think, Lucas?
Tidbits of wisdom from the average bro. Well, I agree with you guys that seems like they're obviously, the problem is with, and I want to use the title of the podcast there. Everyone has problems. Right. I mean, it's not just one isolated thing, and we can't just point fingers at one issue or another. We can mask things, we can hide things, and I feel like we can overemphasize certain problems in culture more than others. But maybe it just having a dialogue about the things that really, really affect the most amount of people, and how can we benefit by helping address those problems and be able to move forward with as many people in mind, and with benefiting as many people in mind. So yeah, addressing grievances is a wonderful topic, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have in store and see some videos.
So, I don't have anything queued up, but listen, I think we should one thing that comes to mind is recognizing grievances is one thing. Effectively combating them or coming up with solutions is another thing. I think a lot of times, for the most part, we all agree with whatever grievances we could probably describe here. The question is, what, if anything, do we do about them? And this is where usually the disagreement comes in. Do we Karl Marx our way through it, or do we capitalize our way through it, or do we socialize our way through it, or do we let everyone free to do whatever they want to and let whatever happens happens? The constrained view or the unconstrained approach, whatever that Thomas Sowell talks about. I'm not agreeing necessarily with Thomas Sowell's solutions, but I think framing, I like the way that he frames the issue of how do we deal with these grievances, and how helpful is it to focus on them even. Acknowledge them, yes, but how much do we let them? How much do we put attention to solving them? How much are we even capable of solving? How capable are we of solving these issues? This is, and it gets really dangerous when you start messing with society, and it's to really understand and feel the grievance and then make solutions out of that feel. I mean, it takes a different part of the brain, I think, to really come up with all the fail-safe ways that one could address a grievance. It was easy for the Japanese, the Japanese in America who were put into internment camps. They were the exact ones who were had reparations given to them, although by the time they were given to them, most of them didn't need them. When we talk about reparations for African Americans, it's a little more tricky. We're dealing with transgenerational trauma here. We're not the exact ones who were slaves. I know which ones in my family were slaves, and I can't go back further in history than that. But I'm not the exact one who was a slave. So why should I be? It gets really tricky when we start addressing grievances and dealing with the sources of those grievances, and then we start, do we go into do we need to go into an oppression Olympics here? Whose more grievances are here or more important than it's like it becomes a real mess. And to trust a government, or the question is, who do we trust? Who do we all collectively trust to identify, diagnose that problem, and come up with an effective solution.
Right.
So I just want to plant that flag right here at the beginning of the conversation, if you don't
Right.
mind.
Right.
So,
Right.
and that's it.
So, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to tell a personal story, and this is,
Please.
again, me going to the micro, um, and hearkening back to our first episode, like, I know this doesn't necessarily lead to like, oh, cool, well, but we can just translate that exactly to the macro, right? However, I think. I don't know. It is what it is. I've learned a lot from my own personal experience in my marriage, um, and it's taken me a long time, man. I've been with my wife for 18 years, um,
Damn,
and
you're a trooper, bro.
yeah,
It's real dedication. I
it
commend you.
is
Wow.
dedication on both our
Yeah.
parts for sure. Um, and like you just said, Dana, like everybody has their own shit, right? I'm I mean, she experienced like deep poverty in her childhood and a variety of traumas. I experienced like a golden life with a dad who was winning Grammy awards, traveling to New York City and going on the set of Sesame Street and traveling around the world and watching him play at Carnegie Hall and you know but even with all the things that I had you know, really beautiful and happy in my childhood, there's still like an accumulation of a whole bunch of shit too.
Oh, big time.
And some of that anyway, there's a lot of different things. And then when those things collide with my wife's shit, right? There's there's hard stuff that comes up, and we have butted heads on lots of different things. And part of what made me really want to marry this woman, and to this day, like stay married to this woman, be like super super grateful for this relationship, is that when that happens, we can work through it and not only just like get a resolution, but like get deeper understanding of each other and of ourselves. And sometimes we haven't been able to do that, and we've needed counseling, and that's gotten us then to that point. And other times we're able to get to that place ourselves. And either way, the ability to address grievances when they come up, and then like see it through to the point where both of us are having insights about ourselves and each other, and both of us are being accountable for our own shit. Um, is like it's extremely rewarding, and it's pretty much like the best thing that I've done in my life. Probably having kids and being a parent, is like really important to. But one of the things that I've learned in this 18 years, and that I still to this day sometimes fall down on, and it's just totally human. I'm not beating myself up about it, but is that like when my wife, and this could apply to any relationship, a friend, a coworker, anything. But when, in my case, in this situation, when my wife has come to me with charged emotion and with like kind of a feeling of grievance about something that's happened, I have often gone on the defensive before going into like a curiosity and a compassion, and and oh, speaking of my wife.
Yay!
So much, huh?
Woo!
Oh, all right.
Hi, guys.
There's a straw.
Hi!
Oh,
Is that just
Hooray!
nice?
Only works so much.
Thanks, sweetheart.
Oh yeah.
So, oh, nice.
speak of the devil.
Yeah. So, so when and
It's a
I
phrase.
see that happening. Just to cut to the chase here, I see that happening on a macro level between groups. When there's a grievance expressed, instead of being curious, genuinely curious and compassionate, and wanting to problem solve together, there is and also like being willing to take take responsibility for your own shit, and being like, you know, I don't see that I don't see what this is, but I see that it's a problem for you, and I want to know, I want to understand, so help me understand. Instead of being like that, and being willing to look at yourself, I see a lot of defensiveness, and then, which is what I used to get into a lot, is I'm mad at you for being mad at me. I have a grievance at you for having a grievance at me. And then you create a whole other layer. And I've been through this with my wife so many times, it's stupid. And I mean, maybe it's, I don't even know. Maybe 100 times in 18 years, like a lot. Where like I create a whole layer that takes fucking hours to unravel, because I've created a whole layer of extra shit because I'm having a grievance about her having a grievance. and then she's pissed at me for having a grievance at her having a grievance. So then we got to unravel that, and the emotion gets escalated, right, rather than de-escalated, and the grievances get compounded rather than resolved. And so there's a dynamic there that I think is like potentially macroizable. I'm just making up words.
Yeah,
Left and right.
Expanding into
the
macro.
macroizable. That is
Scalable.
We have to acknowledge when somebody has a grievance. We have to acknowledge it with curiosity, with humility, with the realization that probably something happened that was fucked up for that person, and like maybe we in some way had a role in it, and maybe if we explore it together, we could find a way to make some kind of real changes that will actually make this dynamic better in the future. And that will make life better for us too. Like, I don't want my wife to be pissed at me.
So the pattern I think that I'm starting to recognize is that the things that are applicable to the micro are not easily scalable to the macro.
Yeah, they're not easily. That's for sure.
So, and it seems to me, I'm open to pushback here, world. And obviously you guys know this because I love pushback and gritty conversations. But it seems like the pattern, or it seems like if it's difficult in the micro, it's going to be just nearly impossible in the macro. Let's just, I don't know, there's many areas of grievances we can start off with here. Let's just take one society that has this identity that is, just say, a minority, whatever that minority wants to be qualified as. And then you have the majority, the ones who, first of all, I don't even know if it's helpful for solving problems to even start any fragmentation, but let's just go with it, okay? Yeah. So this smaller population has a grievance. The macro, I mean, the majority has no. What's their incentive aside from stopping, you know, crime and perhaps or fights and war within, or civil war perhaps within. Aside from that, avoidance, avoidance motivations. What incentive do they have to address the grievances of the minority? You know, in past, I'm thinking as we look in the past centuries of grievances, usually the minority or the smaller group separates, works it out. They get stronger somehow over time. Different groups do it differently, and some. I mean, there's grievance. You know, every group has different grievances, and they're unique to that particular group. And I don't know if how much sense it makes to expect a government or the majority or whoever might have the power, seemingly have the power,
right? Because sometimes that's not a majority of people; it's just a majority of power concentrated, right?
Precisely. Yeah. And then, I mean, how are we going to ask the powers at be to do anything against their interest? How are we going to get them to understand and believe anything that goes against what they see as helping them survive and thrive?
Thrive, right? Yep.
You know.
Yep.
So.
Well, I mean, and
worry about our own shit in the micro. Do the best we can.
I mean, I can relate to that though, because like just to bring it back to my micro, right? Like I feel like I'm surviving. I'm more or less thriving, right? Like the relationship's working for me. You know, everything seems fine, and then all of a sudden there's a grievance that I didn't even see what the origin of it was. It doesn't make sense to me in the moment, right, or whatever, or it seems disproportional or whatever, and I'm like, and you know, I'm just like so many times I have been just like, you know, the macro dynamic you're just describing, where it's like there's no incentive for me to even deal with this problem. I'm just like, what the fuck? Why is there a problem? We're doing great. Life is cool. Be grateful, you know? Like, and that's status quo. It is, to use a controversial term, it's very patriarchal. It's very status quo kind of you know, paradigm, right? Like, hey, why are you making a wave when there's no waves? It's beautiful, you know? But then if you get into it and you're like, wait, okay, there's a wave for you, right? So therefore there's a wave. So let me understand what this wave is, right? What is the deal? And then you start to uncover a whole bunch of shit that you didn't even see, that you just were like literally not even paying attention to. And it's like,
okay, so
it might be really simple, it might be really complex, but a lot of the time there's the ability then, once you do the like, okay, there is a wave, right? And it's legit, you know, that like maybe I can be part of also solving this problem.
But you have to understand, man, on the micro, cool. You can come to that understanding. Okay, there is a wave there. Let's do something about it. You individually can easily come to that realization. a whole group. We're asking a group of human beings that are very comfortable
Yeah. Yeah.
to all together come to that realization and come up with a solution.
Right. When we start talking about on the macro, we're talking about like both like masses of people and systems, right? And that's it's a big ask
Precisely.
because it's a big ask for me already in my life, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like a very open-hearted, progressive-minded, you know, like highly educated, whatever, all those things mean, but like just, a person who's like who should be on the surface, right? Like totally ready for this. And it's been like super hard for me. I'm still learning this shit after 18 years. I'm just putting my reality right out there because it's real. And
And I
I'm
say
humble enough to put it out there.
On a scalable level, on a societal species level, we're not even as far as that. Not even close. Not even fucking in the zip code of where you are.
Yeah. Well, and so what happens, right, is then it's I mean, whether it's a systematic thing or just a series of individual incidents, when people put their grievance out and then they're met with, um, you know, fuck that, why you have a grievance? Now I have a grievance about your grievance. Then exactly what the same shit happens, right? It compounds the layers of grievance to the point where you can't even get back to the original problem. and it compounds it escalates the emotional charge to the point where there's just like absolutely this or absolutely that.
And another problem is that may be the one point of disagreement between two or whatever. The thing is, you and Gray live in a house, and there's open lines of communication all the time, unless the house wouldn't exist.
Right.
This is not the same with individual members, even of the same grievance
of the group,
society.
Yeah. Right.
Let alone that society with the people in the other society.
Right.
How big is the division right now between North and South, red and blue, black and white, male and female? It's just these are huge issues. And to me, again, like I said, I ended off last week. Weird phrase, I know. We get to these through conversation, whether or not it's preceded by war. What I mean is, we go to war. At the end of the day, when the war ends, we still got to come to some kind of conversation and agreement to go on. The thing is, to avoid the war, that's the point, and get straight to the conversation and recognizing, and again, this is easy on a personal level.
Easy.
Yeah, and even that's not even fucking easy.
Right. Easier.
It's doable.
It's doable.
Yeah.
But so now we got to now let's just really dive into the macro here, like Marxism, critical theory. I'm not putting race into it. Critical theory.
Yeah, well, that's what it was before.
Right. Capitalism, monarchism, or whatever you would say, monarchies.
There's like postmodernism.
Postmodernism, exactly.
I have to say, man, I'm not fully educated on a lot of these things. Marxism, I don't know shit about Marxism except for the things that other people have said about Marxism. Never read Marx, never done any kind of deep study in it.
Same boat here, actually.
Capitalism more, but I haven't actually read Adam Smith. I've seen excerpts of his
John
writings.
Stuart Mill.
I don't know any John Stuart Mill's writings.
Yeah.
I don't know the underpinnings. And postmodernism, I have no fucking clue what that refers to, honestly. That Brett Weinstein and Heather Heyer were talking about it, and I'm like, no. And they were saying like most people in this kind of cult of woke don't even know what postmodernism, that they're on this foundation. And I'm like, yep, that's me. I have no idea what that what that refers to, really.
And I think it's important to understand. Now, Peter, you expressed some shade, let's say, towards James Lindsay. I think despite who he is,
James
I don't know
Lindsay,
much about it.
was he the guy who did the video on Gramsci and all that?
Yes, I think he was. Yeah, he was. But I had never seen that. Well, obviously, I'd never seen the video until yesterday or today or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, a few days ago.
But I have seen him talk about explaining the difference between critical theory and postmodernism. He had a really, I think, difficult to understand, but very educational conversation about this with Coleman Hughes that I recommend.
Yeah, I would check it.
But also the other video that I sent earlier today, a couple hours ago, he's talking. So just to understand the history of it, I mean, he's done a lot of research into the history of where these movements came, how they started, and how they evolved into modern day and been co-opted into different movements. The other thing, while it's on my mind, I want to say, do you guys know Daryl Davis by chance? He's a musician, blues. I'd say blues musician.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's got tens, like 30, maybe more, probably more. I don't know. Different individual robes from KK members who he's converted out of that type of thinking, that white supremacist type of thinking. He's convinced all these people with conversation, what we're having right now. Started off, he was at a gig, just like us. We go to a gig, sometimes we don't know what the vibe's going to be. Turns out it was kind of a racist bar that he was in, and he didn't. Real quick history: he grew up all over the world. His father's in the military. He grew up in Germany. He lived on bases where it was very diverse, so he didn't really know racism until he moved to Boston, where he was in this parade, and then a bunch of white people started screaming and throwing shit at him, and he's like, what the hell is going on? And he was confused, like, why are they hating me? They don't even know who I am. So fast forward, he's a grown-up musician, and he's in a situation, and this guy admires his playing. He's like, man, I haven't seen anyone play like that since Jerry Lee Lewis. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And then they started talking, and then it comes up that this is the first time this guy has ever talked to a black person. And then Daryl's, whatever. And it turns out this guy's in the KKK and blah, blah, blah. Fast forward 30 robes later, this guy has the receipts on a micro level. He's figured out how to not be triggered by people in the KKK, and even to the point to where they can meet up and have a conversation at somewhere else, some other bar, and end up breaking bread.
Yeah.
And here we are having some other guy, slightly younger than us, coming around saying, if you're not an anti-racist, you're a racist. I'm sorry, man. Who has better results? Which approach is going to help people understand your legitimate grievances?
Right. And I mean, I think actually one of the biggest problems that Kendi's argument has, and it's, there's a lot of legit criticism of Kendi from a lot of perspectives, not just conservatives,
Yeah, I'm not a conservative.
Yeah, I mean, I started going a little bit deeper into that rabbit hole after our last conversation. I was like, oh yeah, I talked to my wife about it. She's like, yeah, there's lots of, real, like, legit criticism. Anyway, but just saying all this micro macro thing, I see Kendi. See the thing that I can take in and dig about his the way he's talking, the things he's saying, is that he's talking to the systemic aspect, but he doesn't frame it in the right way, because basically he's trying to bring the macro into the micro, right? He's trying to say, like, look, we live in racist systems, and or systems that are basically well, yeah, I mean, for just to put it bluntly, right, racist systems. And so if you're not if we're not actively countering the aspects of racism that are inherent in those systems, then we're perpetuating them, and therefore linguistically, then he's or logically, he's extending that to meaning then it's still racist, right? If you're not countering it, it's still racist. And you can look at systemic and say, right, like, okay, yeah, right, if that's not being countered, the status quo doesn't mean it's not racist, because it already is racist, right? But to then go micro and say, if you as a human being are not in every way, every second, constantly doing something that's intentionally anti-racist, then you're being racist.
Racist, right?
It's like, it's a logical conclusion that is just like offensively simplistic and like non. I don't know. It's like. It's like so much pressure, like, really, is every single person, every single second of every day supposed to be putting their intention and their energy and their action into something that's anti-racist?
Anti-racist, yeah.
Every second of the day. Otherwise, and those seconds that they're being racist. I mean, it's just like, it's fucking impossible for anybody to actually embrace that. That said, like, I mean, I've, like, I'm trying to make an organization that's anti-racist. When I teach, like, I try to bring a consciously anti-racist perspective to my curriculum. Like, when I write my books, and I used to I would be like, oh cool, I got to have this Elton John thing here, and then I'd be like, yeah, okay, but what woman has done a thing, what black person has done a thing? Oh yeah, like, there's Alicia Keys example of this too, there's a Ray Charles example of this too. And it would be really easy. In fact, it was surprisingly easy when I started to interrogate my own, this is where critical theory comes in, right? I'm like I'm critically interrogating my own assumptions and my own actual behaviors, right? That are like part of an institutional approach to learning. I'm affecting hundreds of people every semester in my classes, right? And so, like, if I'm able to interrogate that and be like, oh, there's really good examples of this from all over the spectrum of humanity, I'm going to actually educate myself and present them, not just the things that snap into my head, which tend to be white guys.
Well, on the opposite, like, you posted something on Facebook, Dana, about, like, the best songs in jazz, or something. It was a while ago, but I noticed people just talking about how a lot of famous jazz songs, music from that genre were written by white composers for musicals, in the 20s and 30s, like Gershwin, right? And my point was, like, man, some of the best tunes are the tunes written by African American composers like Billy Strayhorn, or Miles Davis. So I feel like, that's embedded in my kind of logic already because of my upbringing, and embracing African American culture, the jazz art form of the last century. I kind of just already programmed myself to be like, wait a minute, I think these are the tunes that my brain goes to, for inspiration. So I kind of like trying to calibrate myself to kind of feel that vibe, just kind of on what you were saying. It's like maybe taking that time to be critical about, what you're, what kind of music you're procuring for your books, or, for your educational material. So that was interesting. I just wanted to point that
Yeah, I don't remember that post. I
out.
mean,
I do vaguely. It was like it was over the summer or something, right? Or last
I
during the
remember
spring
Yeah.
or something.
posting about whether music theory was
Oh, right,
racist
right.
or
Maybe,
not.
yeah, right. Maybe I think it was part of that post, and I read the feed, and somebody mentioned, like, about, like, pointing out that composition, like primarily being like, jazz compositions in history, like, you always point the finger at like white composers, and, like African American composers don't get the credit they deserve, so my
It's
point was just
funny.
kind of like, man, the best tunes are like, Dig by Miles Davis, or, Stablemates by Benny Golson, stuff like that. That's kind of like where my brain goes. So,
Yeah, it's funny you say that. At one of the three institutions I teach at, I'm not going to say which one, there was a meeting about racial inclusion, I guess we could say. And it's different. It's interesting that the classical side of the meeting and the jazz side of the meeting kind of, just because of the way the musics have evolved and started, perhaps, uh, looked at this issue a little bit differently. I mean, there's not. I mean, I don't know many African American composers in the classical form, but George Walker comes to mind, is a name that I heard yesterday.
mm,
A guy that
mm,
I actually don't know, but I'm going to be checking out for sure. But
cool.
yeah, on the classical side, there's a lot of problems with finding African American composers, because it's just the history, the canon, I guess, what you call it,
Uh-huh.
is white dudes, pretty much,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the way through. Whereas in jazz, it's like, whether you're white or whoever culture you come from, it's like our heroes are like Coltrane, Miles Davis, and
Yeah.
with that said, a lot of those guys did play show tunes, and
Mm.
a lot of the tunes they popularized are going to the money is going to the pockets of non African American composers. Um, even within an African American creation, if you will, something that emerged from the African American community.
Hence
Mm.
the
Um,
contrafact.
Mm.
Hence the contrafact. Exactly. I'm a big fan of the contrafact, as you may know. I have them littered all over my albums. Um, uh, Regardless of that, so I still come back to this flag that I planted at the beginning of the conversation, recognizing the issues and the grievances
Mm.
versus knowing what to do about them.
Right,
Um,
and like in jazz ed, this is a thing. We could go. I mean, let's pull this thread, man, because it's like,
Ink.
yeah. Are we asking, by asking people to think about, like, okay, what more inclusive representation can you bring forward in your curriculum,
Mm.
right? What more inclusive representation can you bring forward in your guest artists that you hire, and in your bands that you put together, in your albums and whatever, and like, whenever it's possible, like, can you bring forward a more inclusive representation? Are we asking to erase or oppress the previous majority, or are we able to do that more inclusion, without another layer of grievance on top of it, right? And that's kind of where,
Precisely.
because it's like, I don't see this as like, oh, I'm never gonna hire another white guy, or I'm never gonna you know, I'm gonna stop being a teacher of jazz because I'm a white male and there's too many of us teaching jazz, or like I'm gonna put only women of color in my methodology books. It's like, no, no, but I am trying to be conscious of the representation. And when I make a list of jazz pianists, my first thing, like, greatest jazz pianists. Yeah, oh, there's plenty of black men in there, plenty, lots, and white men, but it's all fucking men. When I start listing it, and then I'm like, wait, hold on. I know there's so many, and then I'm like, oh yeah, Jesus Christ, I studied with Joanne, right?
Joanne Brackeen,
yeah, and then and you could start going down the list, like there's lots of great contemporary women too, man, like killing serious fucking players, man. And I'm like, but they're not top of mind. And I have to dig past that layer of like basically status quo, right? Which is like what I'm used to, what I've studied, what's familiar to me right away.
Well, it's the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, top of mind. But we have to acknowledge, though, that, well, we can talk about the reasons why, but there are a lot fewer women in jazz.
Right. All the more
and in
reason.
other music forms even.
Yeah, sure. And all the more reason to amplify them when you can, so that, women are, realize there is representation and realize they can aspire to that,
Sure. Yeah, it takes, so yes, agreed. So listen, I think what's coming to mind right now is, I think, again, I'm sorry to keep going back to the same flag in the beginning.
Let's do it.
But there's a diagnosis of a problem, and then there's what to do about it.
Yep.
I'm cool all day long having these meetings about diagnosing the problem and understanding. The problem for me comes in when we start legislating and when we get to the word therefore. That's where I start to have a problem. Identify the problem all day long until you're blue in the face. Give examples, but let people do what they do naturally to deal with that problem versus legislating. This is what we're going to do. This is what starts to cause other grievances. To let everyone know that there's no African American composers on the program this year. There's no African American people on the program this year. And then just and then let the people do what they're going to do. People will start to volunteer, this or that. Just a little personal story from me. I was naively or not naively extremely inspired from a young age by I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King, by the I Have a Dream speech. Right? Especially the part where it says, I dream one day little children will play regardless of race. I'm a horrible summation of a very artistically, of a very amazing speech. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, he says stuck. Little black boys and girls will join hands with little white boys and girls. And yeah.
Precisely.
Super, super inspiring.
And it's like, why is that? Why do we aspire for that only for children? I mean, this should be like, at this point, 50, how many years later?
Yeah.
50, almost 60 years later, 58 years later, we're this is still an issue. So for me personally, that's, and this is, I've never revealed this in public. I don't think I have, at least. When I put a band together, it's almost like a subconscious thing in me. First of all, obviously the music matters. Is the music gonna, who jives well musically? First thing.
Yeah.
Second thing, it's like, I don't want a band with all black people. I don't want a band with all white people. I don't want a band with all anything. I want a very diverse band. It's always been, because we all have different cultures, are different, and we all have interesting, our own unique perspectives to bring to the table. And I just, and just visually, so I and it's partly coming from, I don't like clubs. I don't want to be in a club, whether it's a New York Yankees club, a African American club, a male club, a musicians club, a California club, a Berkeley club. Any of the, I don't want to be a part. Well, this is a funny phrase I heard from someone I can't remember. I don't want to be a part of any group that's willing to have me as a part of their member. You know, so kind of it's a diss to me. But I just, I want to judge people on the content of their character, full stop.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's almost, I almost feel like I'm compensating, perhaps, or purposely trying to put together extremely mixed bands, even if it's a trio or an orchestra or a big band or quintet, whatever. You know what I mean? But this is my fucking decision. I don't want some overlord saying, "Hey, Dana, you only have a white band here. Why aren't you?" Fuck you. For this song, for this suite I wrote, I want these musicians.
Yeah.
This is what I want. And yes, and I haven't had, I personally recognize I haven't had many women musicians in my bands. And partly is because I'm not, in my friend group, I don't know, you know, in the jazz world, I don't know a lot. It sucks. But I am, I do go out of my way when that opportunity is there. I can think of quite a few. Obviously, we all can. There's a lot of killing women musicians out there, but I you know, anyway, done. Going in. I'm talking too much. Lucas.
No, man, I'm really loving what you're saying about it, and ultimately in my life regarding including more women in music, I too have that problem with society. I just don't know. Well, personally, I just don't know enough women. So and even less of the women that are incredible musicians. I wish I did, really. So I'm always like looking out for people, looking out for more, and you know, just would love the opportunity to play. I actually met this killer drummer playing with my friend Manny Barry, who's he's a pianist and gospel singer. Met him in Oakland, and he introduced me to a wonderful drummer from like Vallejo, and yeah, she was just killing it, and I had so much fun. And you know, she reminds me of like kind of Tara Lynn Carrington style, although I've never played with her. But I feel like that would, you know, she really like had a great feel, a great vibe, and we gelled. You know, as a bass player, it's just one of the most important things to gel. The drums and the bass have to be units. So that was my one experience, like in the last few months, of like meeting a killer female musician and being super inspired and having a good time. But yeah, I wish that I'd be more exposed and be able to have more interaction with women musicians in general. That's like one thing, you know, that I aspire for.
And this is controversial Jordan Peterson shit. Okay.
Well, you just like okay.
I know, but it's completely related in my. It's completely related in my brain.
I love it.
Let's go. You know, and I would love to hear this talked about without trying to shoot the messenger.
Sure, go ahead, go ahead.
You know, without trying to punch the motherfucker in the face. It's like one idea he had that I'm still bouncing, juggling in my brain is that women tend to be more interested in people and men tend to be more interested in things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And jazz kind of gets into the geeky thingy kind of world versus it is a democracy and then put bands together. It's all this and all that. Cool. The other thing is that Peterson says, well, and I think this is just kind of common knowledge, honestly. Women have the ability to give birth. We don't, right? That has ramifications in how we choose to plot out our life. Men don't have a clock. You know, I had a cousin who was 67 years old and had a kid. 67 years old.
Yeah.
Okay? Women, that's not going to happen. It's like by 35, if you haven't had, if you want to have a kid, you're starting to get a little anxious if you haven't had one. Therefore, the decisions you make in your life in order to have a conducive life for raising kids, being a jazz musician seems like a pretty risky area to start traveling down, unless you're really the badass motherfucker, like, you know. So I think that plays a lot into why we don't see as many women in risky occupations in general. So I'll just throw that out
there. Sure, yeah, and I think like the argument, you know, from like the equity kind of standpoint, is not that like there should be exactly as many women as there are men, you know, doing everything, or, you know, in jazz, right? It's not that there should be exactly as many women as men doing this, but it is that like, you know, women can do this too. Let's one, recognize that. Let's two, amplify that so the examples are seen and heard, and three, like, let's you know, let's create some more structural equity where we can, you know, but you know,
this is post the therefore that I was talking about before.
But let's do it where we can, where otherwise the status quo would be to just get your buddies, you know, and or like when you're making a book, the status quo would be like, oh, the first 6 people on my list are like McCoy Tyner, Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, and Oscar Peterson. Boom, cool, great. That's all the greatest jazz pianists. You know, what about Jerry Allen, or, you know, etc., right? Like
Rini Rosnes.
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, we could just start going down a list. There's a long list actually, but like those names don't come to my head as fast, right? It takes effort, and that's structural, really. I mean, that's a micro version of structural. And like the Stanford Jazz Workshop has done with their faculty, right? They've committed to like trying to have as much diversity, and even like they've set as a goal 50-50 split between women and men on the faculty, which, you know, you can say that's unfair to men not getting hired, but, you know, what it creates is a very different environment, you know, for women and for the students who see like, holy shit, there's just as many women as men doing this. And because it's possible, why not? So okay, that's just like, I mean, I feel like that's a positive example of equity in more macro in a structural context. But let me just say one other thing here. We can argue that, but here's the thing, and this goes right into what I was just saying. Is it there's the problem is, and that's when you go. So like, I totally respect and hear your argument that like, okay, we can acknowledge the problems and then give people the freedom to enact what they want to enact in their behavior and their
I'm just throwing it out there to
lives,
be
right?
punched. Yeah.
Well, and I would just say like that's great, but the problem is when the majority of people who get the freedom to do what they want don't do shit. They're like, well, the status quo is cool. I'm cool, man. Everything's fucking cool. What the fuck is the problem? You know? Yeah, I listen to you do your grievance, but I don't see a problem. So I'm just going to do what I always do. And that's a problem. Because then nothing changes.
Well, okay.
Right?
Please.
And so this is when we get into this is when we get into the, oh, well, you have to make it structural in order to make people actually change.
Okay, please understand when we do things structure, when we address, there's a danger when addressing things structurally of creating more grievances. Mm-hmm. Right? This is what we talked about earlier.
Yep.
This is the only reason I'm very careful about saying we're going to make 50% of our, what was it, faculty or student body?
Faculty.
Women. Okay, faculty. That's something that seems controllable, that I don't have as much problem with, but you have to understand that also engages the Impression Olympics, okay? Because I remember when that year when it happened there, and my comment, and this is coming from me, who was like, judge people by the content of their character. My comment to that strategy was like, we're talking about jazz music here. Came from the African American culture. How many African Americans teachers are here? How many African Americans are in the student body? Right? That's immediately coming to my mind. Mm-hmm. It was like me and Ambrose and like two other people maybe in the faculty, and we're talking about jazz music here.
I know.
So to put the focus anywhere in terms of a solution is going to create a grievance. Why do the Japanese get reparations? Mm-hmm. Why did the Jews get Israel? And we're still sitting here as second-class citizens. This is what I'm saying here, man. When you start legislating structural solutions to grievances, you start getting into some really fucking tricky shit. And you start creating more fragmentation, more lines of division. This is why I have to be very careful. And the question is, who is worthy of dictating who has the free speech or who decides the structural change? Who is worthy is the question, is really the question for all of these problems that we have. Any problem that we have as a society is who the hell is worthy of changing the problem, of combating the problem. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not to go back to Thomas Sowell's constrained or unconstrained view, but I have to really recognize the constrained. This is what pushes me into the constrained point of view. I'm not conservative, but I definitely am very careful when people start saying, well, we need to do this. Oftentimes, the solutions, like Robin DiAngelo or whatever, or someone, saying this is how Black people should be scene, and it's coming from a white woman. It's like, okay, we're starting. That's a, you know, it's just, what are you doing here?
Well,
stop, slow down.
Yeah.
Before you start telling people and legislating people what they should be doing. Yes, we understand the problem. We understand that there's going to be 20, maybe 70% of these motherfuckers who still understand the problem and don't do anything. But it's going to be those 20 to 30%, or whatever the percentage it is in a particular situation, that does do something on their own initiative, that's going to be making the real change. Encourage the change. Don't legislate the change.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that, don't you? I mean, Stanford Jazz Workshop. It's not like some jazz god said, every jazz program in America must do this, or else be sanctioned.
No.
Right?
Yeah,
Stanford just did that on
Yeah, right.
Jim and the board and whatever, and that's cool, and it's addressing an issue that they feel like they can address, and that's cool. And at the same time, maybe we are leaving out, more of the racial equity aspect of it. I know they've tried to do better with that too. I mean, I argued for that.
I don't doubt it.
I advocated for that as a major factor in the decision making in the mentorship program there. Like, we need to keep this program really diverse. Yeah, this kid plays whatever really great, but like, there's also this other person who's who's black female, and we don't have a lot of those, and it would be awesome to have her here. And then, you know what? Maybe she wasn't as good a player as this other person, but now she's fucking awesome. Now she's like, gaining notoriety, and like, it would have been cool to have her in that program, but because she wasn't as good a player in that moment, we didn't choose her, and so like, yeah, I don't know, would she, we could ask her, would she have not wanted to get hired because somebody else was a better player?
Ask me that. I've been in that situation. Yeah. Do I want a gig because I'm black? Do I want anything?
Do you want any
because I'm black?
Yeah, any recognition of that as like well, I mean, even if the thing about the mentorship in particular in that context is that it's not just about whether you're the best player, right? That's about like
great
your potential as an educator, and also it is about representation and bringing a group of people, and you have to be a great player to get into it. Everybody who's a great player for their age. Some of them are, ludicrous. And and that's cool. But so that's its own context, right? But like, let's talk about, like, yeah, sure, one of your jobs that you're teaching in. I mean, if let's say Chris Potter had applied for that job, and they hired you instead.
He would have gotten it, and I would have.
But what if they hired you? What if they hired you?
Can I apply to be a student?
But what if they hired you instead? Because they were like, we want somebody who's black in this position. Would you feel like that was not cool?
I would not. If I knew about it, especially, I would quit.
Really?
I would quit. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not playing that shit.
But what if they had a reason for it, like that they could explain to you? Like, look, Dana, Chris Potter applied for this, man, and obviously, he's got a bigger name than you, and he's an incredible player, one of the greatest, saxophonists of all time. And you are a world-class player too. And we can all acknowledge that maybe you're not Chris Potter's level, completely, but like, you're close enough, man. And we really want somebody who the students, like our black students, can look at and be like, this is somebody who's an example for me that I can follow. We want somebody who black recruits are going to look at and be like, oh, that faculty has somebody who looks like me, and somebody I can look up to. I want to be like Dana Stevens. You know, he represents a pathway for me that I can relate to more than Chris Potter, right? And so we're hiring you because you bring that representation, you know, not because we're trying to like fit you into some quota of like percentages, or because we're trying to be politically correct, but because we actually want that kind of representation on our faculty. I mean, what if they said that to you? Would you be like, nah, Chris Potter's a better player?
You want my honest opinion?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to hire me, who's not as qualified as Chris Potter, to be a vacuum for other. This is outside of the knowledge that there's inequality. But this is what you're telling me is you want me to come, you want me who's not as qualified to attract more Black people in the student body so that there's one person that heads a college. Or a body, maybe a board. I don't know the motivations of that board, but boards usually want things to survive and thrive. Also on a financial level. So there's an incentive for that organization board to, especially now because of what's happening, diversity and the times. Okay, it's a great obvious incentive for them to have a diverse student body. So they want to hire me to be a pawn so that they look more diverse to the general public, so that they can thrive as an organization.
Well, that's a pretty cynical perspective, but it's possible.
It is very cynical, but it is possible.
It's not the perspective that I expressed.
Sorry.
What if somebody actually legitimately had the perspective that I expressed?
You're right.
It isn't. Well, the thing is, how can I know in most cases?
And how can you trust?
Whether that's the actual person. Yeah, how can I trust?
Because like we said, an hour ago, it's very hard to trust any institutions nowadays.
I'm sorry, man. It's tough, man. It's very tough for me to trust. And listen, I'm gonna tell you about a personal story, just example of this. I don't know for sure, and the fact that I don't know, it bugs me. I got a full scholarship to Berkeley. There's this kid. I'm not gonna say his name. This kid I don't know where he is today. Motherfucker alto player. He could read fly shit on a wall. Okay? The guy could just run circles around me as a saxophone player. And he applied for the same scholarship, and I got it. Mm-hmm. This is 97. It wasn't so that's the reason for me to believe maybe it wasn't. Maybe they really did see something in me that's different. I mean, I do know that this kid was kind of an asshole. He was arrogant. Maybe personality had something to do with it. I don't know. But it still bugs me that I don't know if I was chosen because I was Black. It still bugs me, man.
Did you have any financial need?
Fuck yeah, I did.
So that might have been a factor too, you know.
It might have been.
That kid might have
in that situation. Now it's funny you say that, because when it comes to strictly, this is like what Milton Friedman was saying about the tax credit. What do you call it? The paid
basically
tax credit.
The vouchers.
UBI.
Vouchers.
Right. Now, when it's strictly on income, like how much you're making and whether you need assistance or not, that I don't have much of a problem, because it's clearly rich motherfuckers out there taking advantage of everyone else. The top 2 richest people in the world equate the bottom 65% of the fucking world. Really, people? We can't do better than that? So This is a problem
this
that
is
every
this is the
human
problem
being.
is this is the problem is that I was sorry to interrupt, but that I was saying right that when you give people the freedom, when you leave the industry unregulated, when etc., right? Then this is what happens, right? Like people don't change; they just go deeper and deeper into the patterns, that are embedded.
Equal opportunity today, in a lot of cases, depends on how you handle your money. Equal opportunity just, in a lot of cases, means giving people fucking a means to live.
Yeah, man.
End of story.
Yeah.
Don't say, oh, the Oppression Olympics say that you guys have the gold medal. Oh, now it's you guys have the gold medal. No, fuck it. Are you poor? Do you not have opportunity? This is where I can see some structural intervention happening. But when you start picking and choosing and mean testing who needs and has more oppression, like just fucking stop it, man.
Right.
Just stop it. That kind of conversation. This is what to me, that's chmess. That's chmess. CHMESS. Look it up.
Is it a Yiddish
Janet.
thing?
It's like these. No, it's Daniel Dennett Campbell. It's these side conversations, these intellectual side conversations that people get involved with that have nothing to fucking do with the root of the real problem that's at hand here. The real topic, the real point that should be focused on. We're involved in this mess, and to me, and it goes back to the racism versus classism issue, which we should be focusing on. I fall in the camp of the classism, quite honestly, because if you give everyone health care and an education, that's going to help disproportionately help Black people. Hello. And it's going to help poor people who also shouldn't be, living off of only spinach grown in their fucking neighbor's yard, whatever. You know what I mean? So we need to help people that don't have opportunity. Full stop. The mean test. That's what it seems to me. I'd love to hear pushback from the the population that's a less average than me. But as of yet, and honestly, I would love for not just us to be having this fucking conversation.
I totally agree. It would be cool to get somebody else in on it next time, don't you think?
No. I didn't mean that, but yes, that'd be cool too. Yeah, I meant like
Yeah.
Why doesn't Joe Biden, not Donald Trump, but Joe Biden and some other non-Trump Republican or whatever talk about this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, for real, without trying to,
Right.
So anyway.
Right.
Sorry, I'm preaching, guys. I'm sorry.
Hell yeah, man.
That's cool, man.
Keep it going. Jeez. I learned everything. So many things when I listen to you. Like, I got to look up schmess because I really... And I'm partly Jewish, which is the irony there. I don't know what that means. God, man.
Lukasz, I mean, I'm curious if you have a feeling about this. I mean, did you get a full ride to Berkeley?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's because you were fucking badass.
Oh, man, thanks.
Deserved it.
Is.
Really lucky, yeah.
Yeah, not lucky. You worked your ass off. And
okay, I'll take that.
and you're just an inspired musician, But you probably had financial need, I'm sure, right?
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
It wasn't like making hundreds of thousands of dollars and just
no, yeah, there was
cool. And I mean I remember you and me having a very intense yelling match once outside of our dorm room. It broke me down in a way that was really important, actually, because I had not been looking at my own privilege, and you called it out in a way that wasn't like it wasn't I don't know, it wasn't a macro way. It was very
Mm.
like specific, but it was I don't even remember the exact context of the conversation, except that there was some real calling out of like basically me, how like I was able to just take a lot of things for granted
Mm.
that
Mm.
that weren't things that you were able to. And anyway, I'm just curious as to that whole dynamic. Dana just kind of told his story and how he feels about it. But you're white, you're male, you got a full ride. Your parents were immigrants, they didn't have a lot of money, so yeah, there was financial need. um but
Mm.
like you're not coming from a place of like a whole bunch of privilege in
Mm.
your back.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah.
You're coming from a place where your parents carried you across the mountains and fucking a
Oh,
backpack or whatever and got you to the
yeah.
United States. and
Drove a
and
Citroen to Australia from Prague, I guess, to be more realistic. I almost
okay,
broke down.
Australia?
and like
No, no, to Austria, Austria,
Austria.
Oh, okay.
to Vienna, Austria. No, that'd be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like had
Impossible.
had to give up everything. And
Yeah, yeah.
so anyway,
Um,
I yeah, I'm just curious, man.
yeah. Well, I'm ultimately being a white male in the society. You already have things working for you automatically. So regardless of like where you come from or what your background is, if it's downtrodden, if you are coming from like the lower portion of the financial spectrum, um, and I think it's unique of being from a country with a completely different political system and a regime. Uh, because I always, heard stories. I probably talked about this before, but genuinely, people were subdued, subjugated in communist, bloc countries in Eastern Europe in the 50s, well 60s when tanks rolled into Prague in 1968. So at that point, it was really, really strict. My folks remember, my mom remembers like waking up and hearing the sound of the tanks rolling into the city
Mm,
of Prague. So that was like a real, real tangible thing
mm,
they experienced. And then, when you have like this military kind of that comes in, I don't know, we're pretty lucky in America that we haven't really, so, I mean, we, 9/11 was obviously like a shocker to us where, enemies came to our soil and caused this destruction. But generally speaking, like in our generations, we haven't seen any war on our land, like, and I mean, obviously there's things to talk about there. It's like, as much as a racist and a bigot as Donald Trump was and how he didn't do anything, at least he didn't bring us into any major wars in the last 4 years, ultimately. So that's one thing
there are
I'm
a
just
lot
like,
of liberals that will combat you on that, but go on
oh
ahead.
yeah, right, right. Well, okay. I mean,
Uh,
massaging, maybe hopefully also avoiding conflict with other countries. My point being is that generally speaking, it's been pretty good, and we haven't, at least on American soil, experienced anything that crazy, you know, with like tanks rolling into your country. So anyway, that to me is like, part of the journey of coming here and then having all these amazing freedoms, and I'm always grateful for that point. To be able to have heard those stories of like how difficult it was for my folks, and then how much opportunity I have here in America. So, that's something that I talk to my dad about even to this day, and really to feel that sense of gratitude, and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to help others that are less fortunate. I know that sounds like talking in platitudes, but I think it's really important to address that. Yes, how can I be of service to mankind? How can I help people, educate people, and help elevate people that may need a helping hand in society? Because I know I was helped out too. Just talking about getting a full tuition scholarship to Berkeley. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. And this
Yeah.
society does that, man. We're really good about that. So I'm just, you know, things to be grateful for in America. I'm always going to be like rooting for patriotism. But on the subject of, yeah, like what would you say, Dana, about, you know, conflicts overseas, like geopolitical conflicts right now, in the last, you know, half a decade? Are we like inching ever closer to any wars? You know, there's a Cold War happening, I guess, subliminally, people don't know about, between America and China. It's like that's something that people don't really want to talk about, with all the things that are like the headlines and, you know, in the culture today. But
that's
yeah, there's too much. America has too much financial stake in China to, I think, to get to the point where we're actually gonna have combat with each other. I think there's gonna be a lot of undiplomatic actions being taken, as already are being taken now, in a lot of cases. But I don't see there being a war there. I do see, I sense, I intuit some major upheaval in the Western societies, though. It's just that season. Not many, very few of us are alive who got through this last crisis period, as I keep going back to. These things are patternistic so far. Obviously, patterns do break, but are we at one of those points where the pattern is going to break this time, and we're actually going to, we've seen the worst of it? You know, this particular crisis cycle that happens every 80 to 100 years. It'd be nice. I mean, there are some definite differences between this. Well, the differences between every crisis cycle. Honestly, there's always technology that's enhances society, and that makes the cycle different and unique. But it still is an echo, you know, regardless of the first one, the 1620s, the 1690s, 1770s. 1860s, 1940s. Here we are, the 2020s. The thing that definitely seems to happen every cycle is that the government gets stronger. People lose bits of liberty when the government gets stronger.
Oh, that's obviously not good for libertarians.
This is not good for libertarians.
Man, when you're talking about China, that to me it's like terrifying, and yet I think it's also really fascinating. Talk about macro. This is macro, like on a whole other level, because when you think about like the kind of United States and also just kind of the general Western, you know, society way of like democracy and, you know, varying degrees of social, you know, support systems that are legislated or not, of varying degrees of liberty, personal freedoms or not. But, you know, in general, it's kind of one big, you could kind of lump Europe and North America together for sure, and
Israel as well.
Yeah, and then you have like China, where they have like full on government control of everything, man. Have you seen some of the videos of like the facial recognition? Like, it's a Black Mirror episode, dude. They've got like social points. You know, like you get points on your driver's license if you fuck up here. They've got like points that are like for jaywalking, for, you know, whatever, and they catch you with the facial recognition, and it just registers that shit like in the system, like, and it is, talk about control. It is clamped down, Big Brother reality over there. And I've heard interviews with like just people on the street in China, basically like, it's cool, you know, we don't, as long as you don't do anything, as long as you don't do anything bad, there's nothing to worry about. And like, you know, there's no violence between people, and I don't worry about anybody, breaking into my house, et cetera, et cetera, right? And like, so it's like this totally other way of being that I can hardly even conceive of what it's like, and it scares me. And yet I want to like be cognizant of like maybe at some point there's going to have to be a reconciling of these two realities too, of like, well, okay, it would be nice to not have like so much gun violence, and and like people in poverty suffering, because they can't get health care and whatnot. Maybe the big brother way isn't the way, but maybe there's some kind of reconciliation between these two. But I don't know. I think we might be heading towards kind of a next world war.
Well, for what reason though? Intellectual property theft? I mean, we don't exist the way we do now without China.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't see us. If anything, okay.
I mean, all it's going to take is like the UN deciding they're gonna have military intervention in like with what the Chinese are doing in Tibet or with the Uyghurs, and then all of a sudden there's
it would never happen. It will never happen.
Well,
China's way too big of a player for them. Dude, look at okay, look at the WHO. They won't even acknowledge that Taiwan exists. Okay?
The WHO?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Dude, look at this happened in the beginning of the pandemic. There was a conference call with these different nations, and someone was talking to the head of the WHO, and the question was Taiwan, and the guy pretended like he didn't hear it, and then abruptly answered another question, then was asked again, and then ended the call. All right, China. Listen, like for one thing, there is a Pacific Ocean, luckily the biggest ocean on the planet that's between us. So that's a pretty big barrier, and that's a lot of why we didn't. We had to join World War One, and where we were obviously got into World War II for other reasons, but we didn't necessarily have to do, because we have these fucking oceans between us.
Well, and there's so much.
What happened to Czechoslovakia can't happen here easily because of oceans.
Yeah, and there's so much integration now that there wasn't, literally, of people. I mean, there's so many, Chinese who live in America and are part of this society. There's so many Americans even, who live, and just Western, people from all over the Western, world, countries, that live in China and are integrated into that, and the business connections and like you're saying, the financial connections are so deeply intertwined. And that is, I think, going to force some kind of like what's the word? I keep thinking reconciliation,
conflict.
but yeah, like prior to reconciliation, some kind of like, I guess conflict. That's not the word I'm looking for, but I can't get it. Anyway, some where they actually
butting heads.
Like, we're gonna have to figure this out on some level. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's just two different models.
Well, I mean, there's. I think it's. Listen, every power has an adversary. You know what I'm saying? After the dust settled of World War II, there were only two that were left, powers, that were in any kind of good working order: America and Russia, or excuse me, the Soviet Union. Before that, there are postage stamps with FDR and Stalin on them. There are pictures of Uncle Sam and Uncle Joe, Uncle Joseph Stalin.
We should be careful though, because like if we have these wonderful relations with China, right, where basically they outsource, America's big companies outsource the technology, so things are being built there, and people are making. I'm not even talking about the wages. There's such a difference between what the average Chinese worker makes and what the average minimum wage here is. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about, like, let's say the conditions and the things. Like if we're willing to gloss over like how people live, or like in those factories, people, I don't know, this may be kind of like, this is not a myth. I mean, I read this in Wikipedia. People have been like jumping off buildings because of the conditions being so bad. So it's like, let's not ignore that. We're still working, we're like in bed economically with China, but like we still kind of like don't want to hear about all the, all this like disgusting stuff that's happening there, and we should really, really kind of address that if we really want to kind of get on equal playing fields, and we want to be like morally correct, and we kind of want to go into the future and acknowledge things here in America, like getting people, propping people up, and really like bad, really dealing with things like racism finally, and moving forward into the future, evolving as a society, as a culture. We have to also look at the stuff that's going on there and kind of like, how do we move forward with our relationship with them? And we got to like really like take control. And people should also think about like when they, every time they look something up on their cell phones, hey, be grateful that you have that cell phone. Really take a moment, like every day. It doesn't have to be like hundreds of times a day, but at least just like somebody that worked really hard for maybe $5 a week to like build these things, It's like, it's easy to forget about that and put it out of your mind, and then just like go do your shopping on Amazon and, on your nice little computer. And those things are all like now, and it's partly America's fault. All that stuff's being built there, but it's good to be conscious of that. It's like, maybe we should deal with that. And like on the macro level, those things need to be addressed. But people like Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, they're all in the same fucking category as far as I'm concerned, man, because they're in bed with that. I mean, look at, Burisma, Biden's son, and his dealing with that Ukraine company, right? It's like, that's a blatant corruption right there. And I don't even know what Donald Trump did. So, I mean, that's disgusting to me. And that we need to call that out as we go into the future, I think that's really, really.
Yeah, but this goes back to the flag I planted at the beginning. Diagnosing the problem is one thing. What we do with these problems is another thing. There is an argument to be said that every war that we've been in since World War II or Korea, I don't know, we pick your one. Every one since then has been fucked.
Yeah, there's no moral underpinning at all.
Sorry to shorten it to just one.
Hey, man. If it needs to be said, it needs to be said.
But yeah, they're basically.
But why?
Conquest for treasure. I mean,
we're using a defense program for imperialism.
Yeah.
We don't need to be in Iraq. We don't need to be in Nicaragua. We need to be in Chile. We need to be in Vietnam. Go down the list of all of these pieces of shit wars.
The Philippines.
And we didn't need to. How much better would our society at home would have been? Listen, what they're doing to the Uyghurs in China is reprehensible. That is a problem. What the fuck are we going to do about it is the question. I don't think we should do a fucking thing because we can't even take care of the people in our own goddamn country right now.
Yeah, we better do something about our own suicide rate and before we start talking about, condemning China for their suicides. And we better
there
yeah.
There are pluses and minuses to any governmental system. Yeah. The plus for China is that coronavirus was like 3 months long in China. 3 months, and it's been nothing. They've had functions, it's been functioning as normal. Their GDP went up last year in 2020.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And here we are, all free, yet not free right now.
Yeah,
not free.
Yeah, we got a lot. We got a lot of contradictions to deal with, and we start talking geopolitics, like, we really got to clean up our side of the street. So much trash here, man. People take so much pride in, like, the fact that we have representative government, and we fought a war of independence to have representative government, and but how many U.S. territories do we have still that don't have a vote, man? Like Puerto Rico, dude, the U.S. Virgin Islands. I mean, like, we got to get our shit straight, man. Yeah.
So, fuck a war with China, man. We are more likely to have a war with ourselves, to me, than we are to have a war with China, the hand that's feeding us right now.
Right.
For better or worse. I was in Guangzhou a year and 2 months ago. It was the only time I ever went to mainland China. And I must say, I was no fan of being in China.
Why?
At least it was probably that feeling. I need a different experience. I will admit that, because people I know have been there and they've liked it. Been to Beijing and Shanghai, in Guangzhou, probably
what's
any
wrong
other
with
city in
Guangzhou?
China. Guangzhou, well, it has the world's largest train station, I will say that, and it's not really that glamorous, to be honest.
You should have gone to Shanghai.
I should have. I mean, I've been to the airport in Shanghai, which was amazing in itself, but either way, I had no liberty at all. I wasn't able to, I didn't know how to call home. I didn't know how to get on the internet. None of my credit cards worked. If I didn't have someone taking care of me or making sure I was fed, whatever, and if they were hit by a car or whatever, I would have been ass out in that country. No connection to the world.
It's control, man. It's a grid.
To the rest of the world. And we're talking about a country, again, that's 4 or 5 time zones wide. One time zone. 8 o'clock could be dark here and broad daylight in another part of China. Okay? They are a cohesive unit.
Yeah.
It's a different way of living there.
Yeah, totally.
We don't, and the thing is, that's problem with this country is most of the people, oftentimes the one that represent us in Washington, don't travel enough. They don't have any freaking perception of reality outside of an American privileged perspective. Yeah, people. It's 1984 constantly in China. Yes, every day is 1984.
Shoot, man.
But at the same time, people are a product of their surroundings. It's all they know.
Right.
So to them, it's not a problem.
Well,
if you grew up in Moscow,
in the U.S., right?
You're a Putin fan. Yeah, exactly.
Or you at least you accept it, and you're like, well, I'm grateful for the things that are good, and I can't do anything to change the other things, and so I accept my reality, and I'm grateful for being able to live my life the way I'm able to shape it. Anyway, lots of threads for us to pick up next time. And I gotta go.
Yeah.
Man, that was really fun. Our episodes have gotten increasingly long. We were just over an hour the first one, just over an hour and a half the second one, and this one we're over 2.
No.
It's 2 hours and 6 minutes right now. So
wow.
Anyway, I think it shows that we're having a really interesting, productive conversations.
So before we leave, guys, can we talk more? I mean, we could do this on the feed, but about maybe looping different people in, musicians or cats. I have some ideas. I'm sure you guys probably have some ideas.
Oh, so do I.
Good. Awesome.
Great. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Whoa. A little devilish grin. Devilish
Anybody who has actually made it to this point and watched the episode to this point gets the first dibs on
oh wow.
Yeah.
Along with our our choices to choose who gets to be in on this conversation.
Yay.
Yeah, if you made it this far in the video, put your comment in the below, and
that's it.
You'll be our first guest.
There you go.
Why not?
yeah, right. Or suggest a guest. All right, you guys. Cool.
Okay.
I gotta go. I love you guys.
All right, buddy.